Welcome to the Low and Slow podcast.
We're your girls, Crystal and Laken. If you press play today, trust, you made the right decision.
And know, whenever you're listening to this, it's exactly the right time.
We invite you to pull up a seat to the conversation, get curious about your current perspective,
and lean in for the opportunity to see yourself in another woman's story.
We created That Girl Magic because we've been where you are.
Here, the talk is real and the breath is steady.
Let's get into your next mindset shift.
Hello, ladies. Welcome back to the Low and Slow podcast. Laken and Crystal here. And today we are going to talk about, we're going to frame some things that are going to come up throughout the podcast that we're going to go into pretty frequently, because these are going to be the top 5 patterns that we usually see with almost every client that we've identified through our work. And so we want to talk about them, we want to normalize them, and we want to give you guys a better understanding of what comes up most prevalently and how we work through it.
Yes, welcome back. We are excited to pop off this episode just by talking about them. Like you said, normalizing them, because there's a lot of talk about them, and sometimes the main thing that we see, no action about them, right? Or like, how do I get out of this? So as you're listening to this episode, know that you may want to take some notes. You may want to just have a space where you can listen and reflect on, where do I see myself in any of these? And if I do, what am I willing to do about it? This top 5 looks different for everyone, and you may order these differently for yourself, but we encourage you to listen with an open mind, breathe low and slow. And if one hits, right, ask yourself some good questions around it. Like, where does this come from, right? Where was the first place I saw this? We're going to get into those questions and kind of some things that can help you through these, but let's just get it right into it. Like, we're excited to have the conversation.
Yeah. So today, the ones that we're going to be talking about are going to, and again, these can go by multiple different names, but the way that we're kind of categorizing them today is going to be overwhelm, spiraling, or that stuck feeling, lack of self-worth, or not prioritizing yourself first, self-worth and not feeling enough, or burnout and survival mode. So this is what we see very commonly. And if you end up hearing yourself in any of those, right, it is a good sign that it's probably best to stay tuned, because your nervous system may be affected by that, and more than likely your stories are running some chaos in the background, right? And we know that all too well. So let's get into the first one, which is going to be overwhelm, aka struggling to take action, or that like freeze response.
Yes. So with that, right, a big thing that I see when a woman is here is that it is causing decision fatigue, right? It's causing that either that fawn, that freeze, or flight. Like, I got to get the heck out of here because I'm that overwhelmed. And the first thing I say to my clients all the time is like, overwhelm. Let's take a look at the word. It actually means underserved, right? If we can break that down and just for a second allow that to land of, dang, yeah, my plate really looks like Thanksgiving right now, and it's not even Thanksgiving yet. Right. And there's so much on my plate that I don't know where to start. And I myself, I very much resonate with this, because I do like to take on a lot of things. But something that really, really helps me is, when someone's feeling overwhelmed, they're not sure what to prioritize first, and everyone's priorities look different. A lot of women we work with are moms. A lot of women we work with run businesses. A lot of women we work with, they do multiple things. And so, yes, everything feels like it's what I like to call a glass ball, when in reality, it's being able to take a second and understand that with any ball, even though it feels like a glass ball, can I ask myself a good question of like, is that actually true, right? Glass balls, if we drop them, they're going to smash, they're going to shatter, they're going to break. That's I have to work. I have to, take care of my responsibilities, at my kids, right? Feed my dog, that kind of thing, right? Life or death. That's glass ball. That's a glass ball. Now there's other balls that what we like to call rubber balls, right? These are going to be the balls that when we drop those, they could ultimately bounce, right? And that does not mean that they're not important, but that means that this could be if my plate is looking very, very full, right? If you ever seen those, you ever seen those trays? It's not the regular plate that you get from the store, the paper plates. They're like the styrofoam trays, right? And they have the
Mm.
individual compartments for you put your meat, right? You put your mashed potatoes, whatever. If there's something on there does not fit in one of those little categories, I guarantee you that is not a glass ball, right? There's something that is specifically carved out for those things because those are the non-negotiables. And so the rubber balls are still important, but they ultimately maybe can be moved to another day or done at a different time, or these things could possibly be delegated. I use this specific exercise with a lot of my clients that, you know, maybe they're feeling like this and their partner's also feeling like this. So can they come together to create both of these lists of maybe where they're feeling overwhelmed or what their priorities are, and then be able to say, this is what's all on my plate. What's all on your plate? And can we come together to see what we can either delegate or take off of each other's plate, or maybe even, delegate or like hire, or, you know, get some things off of what feels like Thanksgiving, the overload. So it's like the main thing with overwhelm is that, the antidote to that is taking action. But a lot of times it's that feeling of like, I can't do anything right now because I'm so overwhelmed. And so then it causes that decision fatigue, right? And really taking on more, which I very much resonate with, is like, what are we trying to prove here? If you can ask yourself some questions of like taking on more, even though, you know, we already have a certain amount on our plate. A, that's not tuning into what is priority already on my plate. And B, it's also saying, okay, well, I'm going to continue to take on more just because, like, is it a form of proving to see that I can do it? Like, ultimately you can do everything, but at what cost? Right? So it's like that proving to yourself of like, well, if I take on more, then that may mean X, Y, and Z about me. And it's like just asking yourself that question of like, sometimes it's not a choice to take on more. Like we just have to do the thing. But if we are willing to just slow down and take a look at like, what are we making feel like it is a glass ball, that maybe it's a rubber ball, or maybe I can receive some help, or maybe I can delegate, maybe I can, you know, allow my partner or roommate or whatever to help me with something, right?
Yeah, the decision fatigue is a really important piece. And I think there's a difference between stress and overwhelm. That's a distinction that's worth investigating, right? Because stress is good, right? We don't have a good connotation with it, but stress is actually something that allows us to grow, to adapt, to change, to shift, to do the thing that is necessary in those moments. Stress, I align with like a healthy level of pressure, right? Pressure makes diamonds. But when it becomes a point where everything feels urgent and I can't move, right?
Mm-hmm.
That freeze response, that's when we're looking at overwhelm. When I am unable to delineate, like you said, between the glass or the rubber balls, when everything feels like a glass ball, when everything feels like it's absolutely impossible to allow anything to lax, that's when that overwhelm comes into play. And that's when it benefits us the most, like you said, to ask those questions about what is actually able to wait, or what is actually truly urgent, what is true in this scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And then identify the one action that you can take. And I think what you said about taking on more in order to prove yourself is really important, because so many of us have so much worth tied in being the go-to, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many women do we work with where, whether it's at home, at work, whatever the place is, that martyrdom, right?
Yeah,
The if I don't do it, then no one else is going to do it, or no one else is going to do it right,
correct.
or like there's no room for anybody else to be able to come in and help me because I'm not willing to receive it, nor do I want to give up the title that I have wrapped up in my identity around being the one that's going to get it done. And
That part.
yeah,
That
it beats
part.
us up on both sides, right? It's like
Yeah.
I will simultaneously be the hero and the victim, which is the
Yes.
martyr identity, right? That
Mm-hmm.
I have to be the one to do it all, and I'm super fucking resentful about it that I'm the one that has to do it all and nobody else can help me. Well, no one
Right.
else
That's
is
like
going to help
stage
you.
5.
Yeah, if you're gonna do it all. Help
Yeah.
is not coming.
Yeah, I want to touch on something you said before we get away from it. That stress is a good thing. You know, someone's going to hear that and be like, "What the fuck?" Like, no, I'm trying to
Yeah.
lower my cortisol. I'm trying to like what? And let's just touch on that for a second, because the thing is that everyone has a different spectrum. I guarantee you, if we were to, you know, I like to use numbers with this with clients so that we can really identify. Let's say 0, not stressed; 5, the most stressed. Right now, we're not saying that, you know, hey, get more stress in here in order to make the thing happen, because ultimately that's not going to help you. But the difference between stress and overwhelm is that spectrum, right? What may be stressful to Laken at a 5 or to me at a 5 may be very different to Laken, but it's understanding that it's on a spectrum, and that ultimately, I think, how we were raised, right? Everything that has shaped our conditioning, the way that we saw our parents handle stress, right? Everyone's number on that spectrum is different. And I think over time, we confuse the two, stress and overwhelm, right? Because we have stayed in this default pattern of what that looks like. So I think it's very important to, like, as you're listening to this piece, is really ask yourself, where do I land on that spectrum? And if it's, once I've identified where I land, can I also take myself out of it for a second and see how did my parents handle stress? How do people around me handle stress? Because that ultimately influences how you handle stress, right? And if that's something that you want to change, great. This is where you can start doing certain practices in order to, when this comes up and you are feeling, right? Because overwhelm is also a feeling. And we say all the time, like, right, feelings are signals. And what is that pointing to? So if it's this constant feeling, or like, I'm so stressed, or I'm so, you know, people say all the time, I'm so busy, I'm so stressed, I'm overwhelmed, I don't know where to start, right? That's the prototype of a lot of things that are going to come out when someone's feeling that way. And, you know, this gives you a different perspective of, like, it's not pressure in a negative way, but what if it didn't have to be so stressful? That, like, we can look at stress in a different way when we start to identify where it is on that spectrum.
I mean, you're going to hear us say this a lot, so get over it. We're not sorry about it. What is the story that you're telling yourself about your stress?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's something that I've been practicing, trying to tell myself, because I am continuously reminding myself how important gratitude is, and that I don't love what most people would identify as a gratitude practice of, like, I'm going to get up every day, I'm going to write 3 things that I'm grateful for. Like, that's just not my jam. If it's your jam, cool. It doesn't work for me in the way that I want it to. And so I'm trying to practice gratitude in a way that when something comes up, that I have the opportunity to practice it or to express gratitude in, I'm trying to do it in more real-time moments, meaning something that I've been tinkering with is, like, when I'm feeling very stressed, when I'm feeling that pressure, right? When the foot is on the gas a little bit more, I'm reminding myself, I am blessed to be stressed, right? Like, I am blessed to be stressed with something that is growing me, with something that I'm building, with something that I want, right? Because so many things that cause us stress are things of our own choosing.
Right.
Right. But we refuse to see it that way because it's easier to be the victim in that narrative. And so, can I lean into it? Can I tell myself a different story about the stress that I'm feeling? Because that can really help you reframe it in those moments. And it will also help you delineate between overwhelm and stress again. Because if it's overwhelm, it's probably something that I need to take off my plate. And if it's just a healthy dose of stress, it's probably something I can lean into. And what you were saying before is important. It's really just a misalignment of load and capacity.
Yeah. The word stress itself, it's like, can you take a second to redefine that? Because I guarantee you, your definition may or may not be yours, and it's
May or may not be serving you.
yeah, it's outdated, right?
It's probably somebody else's.
It's probably somebody else's. And if you are still having it as yours, that's also, now we're getting into that conversation of a choice. When I become aware of something, and we can say all the time, I'm stressed, and I'm busy. Okay, what am I willing to do about it? Because, and if it's costing me, if it's at the cost of myself, that stress is going to kill you. right? And until you're, and the funny part about this is like, the entry point for both of us is with women in the health and wellness space, right? And it's like, at what cost? Your body's talking to you, but are you listening?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I want you to go ahead and touch back on that load before we get into the next one, because that kind of ties us right back in, right? That load of the next one we're going to get into is like that spiraling. But before we get to where we're spiraling in that tornado down, like the load feels heavy at first.
Yeah, I think just being mindful of, like you were saying, on that spectrum, there's only a misalignment depending on how aware you are of your capacity at the time. And capacity is going to shift in different seasons of life, and that's okay. But creating awareness and acknowledging the capacity that you have in any given season allows you to identify, again, if this is stress, healthy pressure, or if it's overwhelm. Is this load too much for the capacity right now? And if it is, can I either share it or can I outsource it? Or can I identify what can just go?
Yeah. Yeah. Like a big piece of that is like, yeah, it's hard to let it go because like you said, it's attached to that identity that you have built around it, that like the way you handle stress makes you a better mom, a better worker, whatever, right? Better business owner.
And how I think other people see me.
Facts. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's get into the spiraling, the stuckness, the overthinking. Yeah. So this is like that all or nothing mindset. If I didn't do it perfect, I blew it. It's not worth it. The perfectionism, right? There's nothing in between. That is super prevalent.
Super prevalent. And, when all of that's coming up, right, this could look, we're going to give examples of like what we hear and then also, maybe one that we both personally can resonate with. This is when these things start to happen. We really have the opportunity here to address that shit talking voice in our head, right? We're going to get into that in a second of like the inner mean girl, right? Because a lot of times we're identifying with that voice, and that voice is also driving the spiraling because it's shit talking you the whole time. That like, see, you didn't go to the gym, and then now you're about to go for convenience and eat some shit food, and then oh, you didn't check off the thing that you did this morning, and it's just like that voice. Until we identify that voice and separate our identity from it, because there's Crystal and there's Laken, and each of us have that inner voice in our head that is not us, but that voice is super loud. And something that we talk about all the time is like that inner mean girl, where if we're being internally like this to ourselves, where is that externally showing up, right? So like the spiraling, like she is whoever that mine's name is Cheryl. Okay. And when Cheryl is super loud, she is essentially feeding that shitstorm that's happening in my head, right? It looks like a tornado. That's why we call it the spiraling. And really what's happening there is it's making me feel like I'm stuck, or that, like I'm just, this is where it is, and it keeps going, right? We bring up the food thing because it's like, this happens of like, oh, what this is really saying is, oh, I went again, like it's a form of almost, I don't want to say like self-abandonment, but like I said I was going to do something, I didn't, and that's what started it, right? That was my first piece of evidence that Cheryl received. And then she was like, see, right? And then it goes from there, and you're essentially feeding that inner voice to get maybe louder, right? Or you're starting to believe that voice rather than know that you are not the voice in your head, and that every thought that comes up in your head does not have to be true. Like that is an unpopular opinion, but it's absolute bullshit that everything we think has to be true. It is not.
Also, it's important to recognize why that voice is there.
Yeah.
So often we think like, oh, like it's just because I just talk mean to myself all the time. Right. And it's like,
I'm a mean girl.
Yeah. It is ultimately, at the end of the day, it's a protection mechanism, right? It is,
Yes.
it is your nervous system in your brain trying to keep you in a place that is familiar to you. And if it continues to call out the things that you're either not doing or doing that don't feel safe at the time because it's not what you've been doing, right? It's going to insert all that self-doubt. It's going to make you question yourself because, like, can I really do that thing? No, you can't, because it's different and we don't like it, right? It's like, it's not what we're used to. So it's engineered to keep you safe, AKA in your comfort zone, but that doesn't almost ever align with you getting what you actually want. And so can I say, okay, I recognize this voice, right? Mine is Liz. Can I say, all right, I see.
Wait, I don't know your name.
That Liz is just,
know it was Liz.
Yeah, that she's just trying to protect me, but she's not an authority.
Facts. This is something that is honestly my favorite, and I'll give it to anyone listening here. If you haven't worked with us, know that any point you're working with me, you will somehow or at some point do this. This inner voice, it's not about shutting it off. It's not about shutting it up. It's not about making it go away. It's not going to magically go away. That it's with you. It's about owning it, right? It's about giving it a name, giving it an identity that is not yours. And it's not about never listening to it or ignoring her. It's about turning it down. So like you said, it's not an authority. I tell my clients, we sit there, we identify the voice. It's interesting because sometimes the voice is someone in your life or sometimes it's not. It just depends. It doesn't have a gender. It could be whatever name you give it. Does the voice sound
familiar to you?
Yeah, right? But I tell my clients, okay, well, now that we have the voice, I'll use mine, for example, Cheryl. I want you to close your eyes, and once you have the voice and you tell her, I see you. I hear you. I got you. And know that you are in the car, but you are no longer driving here. Like Laken said, it's like she is not an authority here. She's really here ultimately to protect you, right? So I can understand you're here to protect me. And maybe she's reminding you of past experience or evidence that you've collected, right? And if those are not serving your current reality, this is your opportunity to take ownership over what that looks like, over putting her in check and saying like, hey, Cheryl, you're not driving here. You're in the car, girl, but I got you and I'm doing this thing, right?
Yeah. And leaning into that, right? Like asking those questions and leaning into that curiosity when that voice comes up, that's what integrating looks like, right?
Yes.
There's a difference between integration and rumination. And ruminating is when we let that shit spiral out of hand and it just keeps going in a loop, right? Integration is when we can interrupt the loop and ask good questions and get us to a place to recognize that this bitch ain't running the show.
Facts. The quickest way to interrupt the thought pattern and this is something too with my clients that I tell them, like, I want you to text me. It's like a hotline. I want you to text me when that voice is going off, when that shit storm's happening in your head. The quickest way to help with that is to write it down. And maybe that looks like texting, right? Maybe that looks like writing in a journal, but then it's also to interrupting it. The quickest way to interrupt a thought pattern is to do different. So if you have always said these things to yourself and not done anything about them and just kept them in your head, that is, if you've been handling it that way, how's that working out for you?
Yeah.
So
good luck slowing it down up there.
Facts. It's essentially, I want you to think of each of the, it's not just limiting beliefs, but the shit talking that you're doing to yourself, each individual thing is on its own hamster wheel. And if it stays up there, it's going a mile a minute. And those hamsters are fucking, going until you can, God, the breathing on that in the mic, that shit's going to sound hilarious. Until you can give yourself the opportunity to write it down, text it, maybe speak it out loud so that you can hear the bullshit essentially and say, wait a second here.
Yeah.
Is that actually true? And if it's not, what's another possibility that can be? Just that alone interrupts the thought pattern and gives you a tool to do something different with that information, to not believe it, to lean into the curiosity, like Lake said. And I think, again, that's something that is not practiced enough because it is normal, right? The human experience, or just the brain in general, like, hey, we're human. Sometimes some of our thoughts are fucked up. And if we don't like them, we get to change them too.
Yeah. So I think a couple like surface level tips to help with this, right? Is like C was saying, make sure that you're leaning into that curiosity. You're asking yourself those good questions, writing it down to slow it down. And then also just like giving yourself grace in that, recognizing that, again, like I know why this voice is here, but it doesn't mean I have to listen to it. And kind of remind yourself, okay, this is happening because something internally is trying to protect me, but it's operating off outdated data, right? Like it's only operating off either lived experiences or holding on to traumas or potentially negative red flags from the past, right? Because that's what's going to stand out to try to keep me safe in future interactions. But it's eliminating all possibility by doing that. And so I don't want to operate off of old shit, right?
Yeah.
I'm leaning
Yeah.
into possibility. So just
Yeah.
reminding yourself of that is important.
Yeah. And as you identify this voice, right? Like you gave it that name. And then the next thing is to note and name, right? Call her out, right? So it's like, this is the thing. And let me back up here. It's not just about calling her out. When you can identify this voice, give it a name, its own identity other than yours, and then start to note and name where she is coming up, right? What she is saying, he or she is saying. And then ultimately know that when you decide to do this and you are integrating this, it's not about calling yourself out. It's about calling yourself forward, because let's not shame ourselves for whatever the voice is saying, right? That's the I see you, I got you, right? I know you're here to protect me. It's about taking back that, like Laken said, putting yourself in the driver's seat to say, I'm going to call myself forward because I want to do different with this. And I don't want to keep doing what I have been doing.
Yeah.
You want to hit them with number 3?
Yeah. So next one is self-prioritization, putting her first, right? And this shows up. I don't know that I've met a woman that doesn't struggle with this, to be honest. But it's like, to me, this comes down to an important question that I think it's worth women asking themselves, and that is, who taught you that your needs are a problem?
Yeah. I mean, that's a fire question. I feel like, any woman that asks themselves that is like, damn, but when you just said, I don't think I've met a woman that hasn't, it's because to be honest, the nature of the feminine and women in general, right, is more like feminine is the nurturing.
Is
Feminine
to give,
is
yeah.
right, to give is to be that safe place for everyone else to land. But the thing is just like when you on that airplane, bro, they put your mask on first, because if you don't, here you are gasping for air, trying to help your kids, trying to run the company, trying to, doing all this stuff. And then ultimately what happens is like, well, if I don't do all the things, then that means something about me, where it's like, oh my goodness. Like we can be the solid feminine, the divine feminine, when we start to honor the answer to that question and say that ultimately whatever I'm desiring or needing is okay. And it is enough to have all of those. And that needs to be I am my first priority.
Yeah. And there's this icky feeling that comes along with that, right? That says like, oh, if I do that, I'm selfish.
Correct.
And
we hear it all the time.
Yeah, I don't want to be selfish. It's selfish if I do that, right? And it's like, that's learned. Like someone that you didn't come up with that on your own, right? Like that's learned ideology. And I would also say, like, anyone, especially moms, right? Any mom that I talk to that I'm like, okay, when do you show up best for your kids? When you show up for you and your kids get home from school and you are operating from full capacity, can you notice that you have more patience, that you're able
The
to
full
speak
cup.
kinder words to them, that you want to engage with them, like actually, and not like, oh, like I don't, you know what I mean?
Like you want to hear about their day. Yeah.
Exactly. You're excited and you're able to access that inner joy, right?
You're
when you
present.
are depleted because you have to do all the things and put yourself last and burn your shit on the back burner, right? Then that means that they show up and you're there, right? But you're not fully present. It's like, can you take care of yourself in a way that allows you to show up in the best possible way. So that way,
Yeah.
and here's the thing, when you do that, everybody wins.
Yeah.
Because they
Yeah.
get to not only see you in that full capacity, but they get to get an example of what it is to take care of self.
Facts. If women could actually see themselves, so like the whole thing of what everyone says of like, you can't pour from an empty cup, but the thing is yes, it's that, like, if the cup is full, then everything that you are pouring out of is because of the overflow.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But if you're only filling up the cup halfway and then pouring from that, well, what else is left in your cup? If women can really see with, for example, in the analogy you just gave, that they're the whole goddamn table, and everyone that's coming to, like, when the table has everything it needs on it, everyone eats. Right?
Yeah.
Like, you're the one that, and I'm not using the table like setting the dinner table, but just it's this analogy in my mind of like Thanksgiving dinner, right? Like, everything's on there because everything's been prepared and everything's been poured into, right? And then everyone eats when the chef took care of themselves first, right? Like, they ate and they, took care of themselves. And then this is why people can come. Like, that's why the feminine is the one that people come to, right? And I think if we can slow down just for a second and talk about, like, what you said in the beginning, the word selfish, or just even the selfish, self-centered. Let's take a look at those words, because similar to like overwhelm, meaning underserved, selfish, right? If we were to separate that, essentially when someone says selfish, and this may not 100% resonate for everyone, but essentially when someone's selfish, they're like fishing for themselves, right? Or when someone's self-centered, it's like putting themselves at the center, right? The center of themselves. And I think, again, it's redefining like those words, right? Stress, overwhelm. We look at it in the negative, but the word selfish, if that means I'm putting myself as a priority, right? And I'm fishing for what exactly I need. I think this is an interesting thing to touch on, because you and I have two different perspectives about this, but I like that we have two different perspectives about this. We were talking about this the other day after dinner, and I was saying how, personally, to me, I think that desire is a baby of wants and needs, right? And so in the word selfish, I just relate it to that, where it's like I'm fishing for myself, of like what I actually need in this moment, right? And when it comes to things I desire, right, which is like the wants and the needs together in my mind, which I know you'll give the counter to that, it just allows you to see where, okay, I can give myself what I need first, and then when I do that, I'm able to not be selfish and can be available for others to give them what they need, right? Because I've honored my own first. And that's where, like, the redefining of those words, that they have such a shame and negative connotation with them, where, of course, nobody wants to be told like you're selfish or you're self-centered because of what's attached to them. And it's like, well, who's the only one keeping those definitions of those words?
Well, it's the difference of like a scarcity and abundance mindset, right? Like, if I believe that by me being selfish, it means that it takes things away from other people, then I'm going to hold a negative connotation around it, right? Versus if I believe that I can show up for myself in a way that increases my capacity and I can show up for other people, then that's an abundance mindset around it, right? And so it's like, how do I look at it? And going back to what you said real quick, to me, the only difference is like I categorize them differently. So I look at needs and desires as differently. Desires is more of a want for me, and a need is something that is a non-negotiable. It has to happen. With that being said, if my needs are not met, I don't have room for other people's needs, right? I could fake it. I could tell myself that I do, but I'm not showing up authentically, meaning any level of generosity that I'm giving, any level of service that I'm providing for other people, it's coming with a side of resentment, and that shit tastes bitter as fuck, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I want to show up in a way where I'm showing up authentically and genuinely in what I'm giving to others. And if I can't show up that way, then personally, like, I don't want it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
it's
I
not
hear that.
serving me or the person that I'm trying to show up for in the best way.
Right. And, something that you touched on where it's like, okay, if I can't take care of my needs, right? It's like, I damn sure can't take care of someone else's.
Yeah.
And when we think about that just in terms of relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what we're saying here too, it's like, those needs are sometimes what is the foundation of that emotional safety for ourselves. And when that is not present, of course, that's not going to work. Maybe if we're not giving that to ourselves and we're expecting that maybe in partnership or in relationship, it's like, wait a second here. Like this is where with a partner, with your wife, with your husband, whoever, right? Like it's even in a friendship, like it's really being able to say like, okay, if I'm not meeting my own needs, then I'm definitely not going to meet the needs of others. And like, what expectation is that putting on whoever? Right.
Yeah.
And ultimately,
Because
right, like,
I'm going to be seeking for that gap to be filled.
correct. Right. I think this is where like the whole thing of people pleasing comes in. And it's like, if everyone else's needs are coming before your own, and that is essentially like, that's not a safe environment, right? It doesn't feel freaking good. And if that's happening, right, creating that emotional safety could be the first place where you start to do that, right? It's okay to honor your own needs. It's okay to have needs and start looking inward first before externally, right? And in reality, it's like, if you could have more of that safety for yourself, what could that be solving for you, right? How many areas could you apply this in your life? And if people pleasing is something that you identify with, I want to ask you one question of like, okay, if you continue to do that, A, how's that working out for you? And B, what is the cost? Like, what is it costing you to continue putting everyone else's needs before your own?
Yeah.
And the cost is the emotional safety.
Well, and is paying that sustainable long term.
Yeah.
For you. And I think it's really important to constantly recall how important awareness is in these dynamics, because people pleasing, again, happens for a reason, and it's a safety seeking mechanism. Right. So we learn to people please because if everyone else's needs are met first, or if we're making sure that we're putting ourselves last, like that's telling me this is how I have to keep connection. This is how I have to avoid conflict. This is how I have to solidify my position in this relationship. Right. Versus if I can be aware of that and recognize that I'm not coming in fully and authentically as myself when I'm doing that in this relationship, then how can I ever give that person the opportunity to have the discernment to actually love me for who I am, right? If I'm not showing up in that way to my fullest.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, and this is where like the whole thing of like emotional safety comes from, where again, I think we are just, just like our mindset is shaped by our lived experiences, things that have happened in our life, conditioning, programming, how we were raised, whatever, right? What the story that you tell yourself about yourself to yourself. And we are human beings that ultimately are going to do things to keep us safe. And so if we have learned that people pleasing and putting everyone else's needs, or also being hyper aware of what everyone else needs, and then we need to act a certain way or do certain things in order to keep that a consistent, like make sure the household, right? The whole thing about walking on eggshells, right? Or like, I need to be aware of how, when dad gets home, I look busy, or I'm acting like this, or I'm quiet, right? Or just different things, because that's what's essentially keeping us safe. And like, similar to like with the body, our body wants to keep us safe too, right? Which is why, especially as women, it's like we easily can gain weight, right? It's like, it's not to say our body is essentially always trying to keep us safe. And these are learned behaviors, specifically here, where we have learned what really keeps us safe. And until we start to look at it through this lens of like, okay, well, I'm keeping me safe now, and what actually does that entail that is not having an emotional response tied to it, right?
Yeah. Let's get into the next one.
All right. self-worth and not feeling enough or having that enoughness. This is where, that inner shit talking voice, it comes back up, right? That harsh critic, that, that mean girl voice. When we first talked about this, it's like the inner shit talking voice. And we're like, we got to come up with a better name for that. And then it's like, oh, the mean girl, right? Because if we're being a mean girl internally, what is showing up externally, right? That shit talking voice. Maybe this looks like constant comparison.
Yeah. If your journal looks like your own personal burn book, what does that say
I
about
love
you?
that. Literally, if you're being Regina George, right? Calling yourself a fugly slut, like, girl, right? Taking your picture and pasting it in there. It's like, oh my goodness. And this is a big thing to touch on, especially as women, because, again, the idea of what a woman is supposed to look like, act like, feel like, operate as, right? It's this constant comparison to what fucking narrative, right?
Yeah.
Like, and as you're shaping and building your identity, this feeling of self-worth or not feeling enough or, just discounting your own wins or the things that you do, right? Like,
yeah, like if you can't see your own wins, but you're real quick to peep everybody's highlight reel and be like, oh my gosh, everybody else is doing so great. And, but I can't recognize I couldn't tell you the last good thing that I did. Right. Then
yeah.
Houston, we have a problem.
Yeah. Or that, like, when you do that, you're wanting to celebrate everyone else, but then you can't celebrate yourself. And then it's like you're low key hating on the inside. Like, girl, that's not cute. It's not cute.
It's not. And it runs rampant. Like, it's very, listen, I struggle to celebrate my own wins. I am working on this. Right. And I recognize it, but also part of it is, like, I like the pressure. I like, when I do something.
Laken is not the normal, ladies. Okay. We get that. She's a manifester. Again, I'm going to circle that back for you guys every time. She's a 3-5 manifester and she's built different. So if you resonate with her, just know you built different too. And it is it's good to hear a different perspective.
It's very good. And Crystal really helps me a lot with reminding me to celebrate my wins, because it doesn't really register on my radar very frequently. To me, it's like, well, if I said I was going to do it and I planned on doing it and I did it, of course, right?
It's like, already done, right?
The next, right. And I compare this to the gym a lot, because this is the most tangible metaphor that I have, right? Is like, I just remember, and I still do this now, anytime that I hit a number on a lift that I want, right? Like, let's say like I hit a number on a back squat and I'm like, yeah, I really wanted to hit this number. I hit it. And then it's like, cool, on to the next. Like, it takes practice, and I have to be very intentional about saying, like, yeah, you did that. Like, celebrate it, enjoy it for a little bit, right? It doesn't have to mean like, all right, throw 5 more pounds on there and let's go till we break, right? Like, I have to be intentional about it. And a lot of people can resonate with that. And I think it's important to call attention to, because there are different components of this that everybody's, working through. And I don't think any of us are immune to it. And so it again takes that awareness is the key piece. And then, can I recognize that it would benefit me to try it, or like try something different?
Right. I think this is what I love most about our relationship, is that ultimately we're always going to reflect things back to each other. And if it's different for everyone, whether you do celebrate yourself or you don't. There could be a whole bunch of different categories here. Either you struggle to celebrate yourself, and therefore then you don't celebrate others, or you don't celebrate yourself, but you can only celebrate others, which means you can't see any of your own wins. Or it could be the other side, where you celebrate yourself and you are celebrating others because you see the benefit of that, right? Yeah. Now there's that other component of like, you can celebrate yourself and maybe you don't celebrate others. And it's like, in all 4 of those scenarios, there's an opportunity to do different. And if we can come back to celebrating the wins, right? This also, there's one side of that coin, and the other side of it is being able to receive that same thing, right? And
Mm-hmm.
this is a big thing with women. It's like, I guarantee you, go up to a woman on the street or like in a coffee shop, stranger, right? And I do this all the time and I love it, right? I'm not out here catcalling at women, but I tell them like, "Oh my God, I love your bag. Oh my God,
Yeah,
your
you give
jeans are
people their
dope."
flowers.
Literally. And it
Yeah.
is, it's just like saying like, you see someone, it's like you make their day with what,
But
a
I'd be
couple
willing to bet,
words.
right, that most women that you do that to, they're going to discount that shit. It's, oh, it was on sale, or, oh, like no big deal, or, you know what I mean? Like something I threw on.
Or sometimes, the main thing that I see when I do that, or like if I tell a girl, like on Halloween, we went out and, I was a sun goddess, so I'm feeling real good about myself, right? And I just see so many women that put so much effort into their costumes and they look freaking amazing. And I'm like, yes, girl, you did that. Like I get called the ultimate hype girl and I live up to that name. Like, I'm going to celebrate you. I'm going to give you flowers. And I think it's nice when women, like, it's almost like they're shocked that I actually said what I was thinking in my mind, because how
Mm-hmm.
often do you see someone that's like, "Oh my God, she's really pretty," or "I love her hair," or "I love her bag," whatever it is. And you just you keep it the fuck moving. And it's like, actually, if women were like this to each other, that sister wound that we have so bad, maybe it wouldn't be as bad, right?
Yeah. Because what tends to happen is we internalize it, right? Like we see
Right.
something that we like in another woman, and instead of celebrating her, we'll say, "Oh, I
I
don't
don't
like that
have.
thing about me."
Right, right. Or it points
The
out
lack.
something maybe that you don't have. Exactly. The
Yeah.
lack, right? And then where does that lead to? Where it's like, we can look at, there's two sides to every coin, and sometimes two truths can be simultaneously happening. But in the two sides of every coin, it's like, well, if I can't celebrate my wins, am I able to receive those
Mm-hmm.
compliments? Or maybe even deeper than that, can I receive feedback, right? Because sometimes in receiving feedback, we may be criticizing ourselves. We can't
Yeah.
actually receive this feedback that someone else is giving because we're so stuck in that inner critic of ourselves. And where does that lead to? Self-sabotage.
Yeah. Yeah. Or I was gonna say, even like sometimes it's a whole different brand, right? It's like celebrating wins is even on my radar because I'm so scared of winning because it's so
That,
unfamiliar, right?
yes.
That I will retreat into the familiar hell every single
Hmm.
time. And then I'll tell myself that that's what I deserve.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like, I heard this on Jay Shetty's podcast On Purpose. He had Emily, I forget her last name. She's a neuroscientist. And she was saying how, celebrate your wins, but what did she say? She was saying like, yeah, celebrate your wins, but ultimately get curious about your fears, because, it's not about not knowing the next thing that you're going to achieve or win at. It's about really the underlying that maybe you're not allowing yourself to believe that you actually deserve it. And the underlying fear of actually doing the thing is
Mm-hmm.
really you being able to, or you being fearful of actually achieving it, because, well, what happens if I do, right? And it's
Yeah.
like waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
Juicy conversation here.
Yeah. Like a good reframe for that sometimes is like just, I know people say this all the time, right? It's like the inherent worth thing. And it's like, yes, you are inherently worthy, but leaning into the evidence, right? Like starting to be intentional about celebrating your wins, lean into the evidence of the things that you have done, especially in the face of adversity, especially anytime that you've gone outside of your comfort zone, right? Even if it's small, we only want to
Small,
celebrate
big or
things when they're
small.
like, when they're huge, right? And it's like,
Facts.
there's got to be rungs in the ladder along the way. So it's like, look at the last step that you took versus where you haven't gone to yet. And like, can you celebrate that and recognize that, okay, like my self belief is just catching up with me and it's going to take a little while, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's, in the small things, it's like, let's give them something like integrative of what that can look like on a maybe daily or even weekly basis. When we work with our clients, I would always ask, what's a challenge and what's a win and a challenge of your day? Right. Or
Yeah.
something I do. My alarm at 10 p.m. goes off every night and it asks me to kick it to me, which is keep it crystal clear, keep it real funky today. Give me a high and low of your day. right?
Yeah.
What was a win? What was a challenge? And that's something that I may not always do externally out loud, but it's always something I do internally, because I guarantee you, when I don't acknowledge it, that's what's on my head before I go to sleep. Right. So
Yeah.
it's like, can I celebrate the wins? If I start to do that every day, by the end of your week, how many wins did I celebrate this week? Right. Or maybe you want to start off smaller than that. Choose a day of the week. Maybe it's Friday, right? Friday is the day. Like someday it's payday, someday it's pizza day, someday it's vacation, whatever. Can you celebrate your win on Fridays? And once you start to celebrate it, maybe then you can share your win with someone. That's the next thing that you can start to do. And, think about when you do this to yourself, with yourself, all the moms out there, what would happen if you did this with your kids? You would ultimately be showing them what it looks like for them to celebrate themselves and to give themselves that credit, that validation, and maybe that keeps them from looking for it elsewhere, right? Because you've taught them.
What kind of foundational habits can that build?
Right.
All right, last one: burnout and survival mode. All right.
Whew, this the one that all of these freaking feed into. It's like the funnel will be here at the bottom.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's like, this is like the outcome of the first four, right? Like the overwhelm, the spirals, the not choosing yourself, that low self-worth, all of that combined, like your nervous system is cooked. Right. And so that's why what we see that come up a lot with this is like feeling like you have to, like what we said before, like having to do it all, feeling like you get to a point where everything's kind of resulting in conflict, right? You feel like you're constantly, anything that anybody's throwing your way is criticism. Right? Like, I'm the ultimate victim in this narrative at this moment, right? And default patterns are going to be things like shutting down, chronic overfunctioning, like not being able to actually like slow your roll at all. I'm going to be scrolling to avoid. I'm going to be probably drinking alcohol or indulging in something that's probably going to allow me to not have to sit with my thoughts, right? And I'm definitely going to be overworking.
Yeah. I think this is a good point in time. And, we want to give shout out to, our coaching community in Lifted. And there's a jingle for this. So if you want to look that up, shout out to Dave Ray. The victim mentality. And I want to read you the definition because, again, this is something that I think when most women hear victim, they're immediately turned off by it. I'm going to be honest with you. I was 100% turned off. And then when I understood what it was, I was like, holy shit, I actually have been living in I'm living in my own victim mentality, right? And this is where it is the opportunity to discern and decide. Do you like the lens in which you're speaking out of, right? The victim mentality is an acquired personality trait where a person tends to regard himself or herself as the victim of the negative actions of others, even in the absence of clear evidence. Key piece here, the victim mentality depends on a habitual thought process and attributions. I read you the definition of that because I think until you know that that's what that means, if someone was to tell you, oh, you have a victim mentality, right? You're going to be like, what the fuck?
It's going to trigger defensiveness. You're like,
yeah.
Fuck no, I don't.
Right. And in reality, this is where if you can, like we said earlier, it's not about calling yourself out. It's about calling yourself forward. And so there may be things like triggers or some default patterns that show up, right? To where you can start to, I don't want to say challenge, but start to get curious about your victim mentality. Because guess what? We all have a victim mentality, right? We all have an inner shit talking voice in our head. And guess what? The only person that can do something about yours is you. And if you decide to not do something about it, that's also a decision, right? That's a choice. Yeah. And I think the victim mentality that we can stay in is like you said, doing everything for yourself, or like not being able to receive, not being able to ask for help, having guilt with something as simple as rest, which could actually be good for you, right?
I have that. Hi, my name is Laken Somerville, and I struggle with guilty rest.
I think any woman who is high achieving, or that actually, let's just call it how it is, gives a fuck about what they're doing, they're going to struggle with that, right? Because it's pushing up against like that programming or what they have told themselves, that identity they have built around being able to produce or have outcome. Like, you know, it's tied essentially to the worth, essentially, right? And, you know, I think every woman can relate to that.
Yeah.
And rest, ladies, is not listening to a podcast or not scrolling on your phone, right? Rest is like, can you be in a field of grass and not need anyone or anything else and not do shit and just soak up that sunshine that's shining on your face? Or just to, you know,
you
like
snuggle
not
with
need
your
the
dog?
not need the stimulation of anything else. And if whatever's going, you know, a lot of women can't rest because their brain's going a mile a minute.
Yeah, the thing is what we want, right? What most people are reaching for in place of rest is, like we said, avoidance, right? So a lot of people say, well, that's how I down regulate, or that's how I wind down is with Netflix or scrolling or you know
wine.
insert bullshit vice, right? And it's like, you're not really resting. Like, let's be honest. You are numbing,
right? And it's, I think a good question to ask yourself if you don't know if it's resting is, does it require an external source?
Yeah.
Right? If it does, that's not resting, right? I mean, I understand you may throw on like a meditation or something, fine, but just, it's hard for women to rest because internally what's going on there, right? So if it's requiring an external source, whether that be, you know, the phone or what, all these things that we just described, right? Can we go back to, well, what can rest look like, right? Let's think of it in the positive, in the direction we do want to go. What can rest look like if I start to tune into me, right? Go inward of like, what do I need right now in this moment? That is the number one question that I ask so many of my clients. If we can just start to, this is where we bring in the nervous system work and the somatics of like, okay, let's start to note and name whatever's coming up that I'm feeling. And can I use it as a signal that is pointing to a need that I have? What is it in this moment I need right now? Right. And when I identify it, if it's going to come up in the body, it may not be super loud, but that is where intuition comes in. It's going to be soft and just tell you rest. Okay. Can I give myself that? And it may be any form of capacity. I get it if it's in the middle of your workday, but maybe that just looks like taking a break, walking away and coming right back. If you can give yourself some rest, maybe that's just with a quick nap or, you know, just closing your eyes for a little bit, right? It's like, can we give ourselves the chance to have our body speak to us and for us to be listening? What is it in this moment I need right now? That is a simple question that we can ask that I guarantee you not enough women ask themselves.
Yeah, facts. All right, ladies. Well, this was a juicy one. So we talked about a lot of things today. This will not be the last time that we talk about them. These categories that we named today are definitely going to come up in more detail as we continue to take you on this beautiful podcast journey with us. And all the things that we talked about really roll up into, you know, how safe you feel being you in your own life. And it is yours to have. So we hope that this was helpful.
Yeah. Hope it's helpful. And as, you know, you continue to listen, you know, like, if you follow us on Instagram, specifically around this episode, which will drop in a couple weeks, like, let us know your thoughts. We want to hear from you, right? We're creating the table. We're inviting you to pull up a seat. And as we're doing that, right, a big piece of this is it's you participating in the conversation, right? And you getting curious about some of the things that you're hearing and where that shows up for you. So we're excited to continue the conversation. And as a reminder, we so appreciate that you're here. Please like, share, subscribe. You know, if you heard this would be the one, ladies, that share it with your homegirls, right? Send it to a friend, send it to somebody who maybe needs to hear this. And this is the one that you save and revisit maybe on a day that you're having a day, just to reframe some of these things that we've talked about. But please like, share, subscribe, follow us on Instagram at thatgirlmagic.co.
Please
And
rate and review the podcast.
yes,
And
we're new. It's a baby.
yeah,
We
it
want
really,
to.
really helps us a lot. It means a lot to us. We will receive it.
Yeah, we will receive it.
Yeah, if anything strongly resonates with you, I would say if there's something that you want us to go into a deeper dive on, please reach out and let us know. We would love that feedback. And also, if there's anything that you have any questions about. At some point in the future, we will do an AMA episode, kind of
Yes.
an Ask Us Anything situation. But
Yeah.
if there's anything that you guys have questions about specifically, please DM us. Let us know.
Yeah, let us know. We'll take it to the pod, as we say.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.